Hi, my name is Dara Frazier, and I want to welcome you to A Right Way. So, the reason why I settled on that title is because there is no quote unquote right way or wrong way to write. As long as you keep writing, that's really all that matters. Consistency is everything. And staying true to your passions and the stories that are deep inside of you, that's what's going to carry you through the ups, the downs, all of the different twists and turns in this journey to get your stories out into the world. So I want to share with you my very personal reason for why I wanted to become a writer in the first place. And long before my most successful points, like being in film festivals and writing scripts for Disney and HBO Max, or Max if you want to call it that, or helping to develop a project for Netflix that they actually didn't want to move forward with. Hey, that's okay, that's the way it goes. And even having some of my plays performed off Broadway and all around the country, long before those things happened. Just when I was a little girl growing up on the west side of Detroit, I was most inspired by my maternal grandmother, Mary Lee Brown. So I actually grew up next door in the house next door to my grandmother. It was me, my dad, my mom, and my younger brother, Kari. And we were in a two-family flat. And sometimes in the downstairs flat, family would stay with us. Like my cousin stayed with us for a stretch. And then in the house next door, that's where Mother Dear was. And my great Aunt Marie was actually a few blocks over. So it was very much a family affair all the time. A lot of great food and gatherings and conversations. And as much as I love to talk, I couldn't help but be a sponge, especially listening to these very rich and layered stories from the elders in the family. And Mother Dear, like, she opened up quite a bit about her life, and things about what she shared just really resonated with me on so many levels, even as a child. Just sitting on the porch eating ice cream, she would tell me what it was like for her growing up in a small town, Thomasville, Georgia. And life had taken her so many different places. She was one of eight children, and her father was a Presbyterian minister, and her mom was actually a school teacher. And even though they didn't have much in the way of resources, they managed to send all eight of their children to college. And I still find that to be remarkable, especially for a Black family with very limited resources and no connections, but they were determined to give their children a better life. And I know that those values were instilled in Mother Dear so strong. And that's one of the reasons why she decided to leave Thomasville. Eventually, her and my grandfather settled in, they had a little detour in Nyack, New York, and then they settled in Detroit, Michigan. So at that time, Detroit was the place to be. All of the manufacturing jobs, it was much better opportunities for people to escape the segregation of the Deep South and, land opportunities in the North. So many families in the Great Migration came to Detroit, Chicago, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, etc. And at that time, Detroit was really the heart of so many things, not just the auto industry, but a lot of things in entertainment, music, everybody was passing through. And if you look it up, you can actually see that Detroit was known as the Paris of the Midwest. Some of the most beautiful buildings in the world, especially if you go downtown, still exist there in the city of Detroit. So this was a Detroit that my grandmother came to and kind of staked her future in. And all through the years, she would share stories about all of her experiences as a social worker, working in the city. And she also was a very talented musician. She played the organ for the church, and she had so many different gifts. But probably the thing that stayed with me the most was how she was our family's griot. In West African culture, The griot is the storyteller of the village. And sometimes Mother Dear would just open up a photo album and share stories about different cousins and siblings and nieces and nephews, or people who had come before, or letters that had been written. And she preserved a lot of this history. And it was very powerful just to take that in. So all through the years, I would listen to Mother Dear tell her stories. And then it dawned on me, because obviously, like maybe I'm 6, 7, 8 years old, I hadn't done a whole lot of living yet. And I really, didn't know if I had stories to tell. So I just started making up stories. Like I remember one day I said, Mother Dear, what if an elephant became friends with a lion, and then they went to the river and they saw a monkey who wasn't friendly? I would just make up stories. Mother Dear was the very first person that I quote unquote pitched to. And it was it was really cute looking back at it, because she would just sit back in her chair and say, mm, Dara Ruth, that sounds interesting. So I guess that was her way of saying that maybe the story needed to be fleshed out a little more. Maybe it needed a little more work. But I continue to be inspired by her. And so she's one of the big reasons why I wanted to become a writer. I was also a very avid reader from an early age, and I would read books that probably, I don't know, like how many like 10-year-olds are reading the Book of the Dead or Roots or things like this, but I was drawn to those kinds of stories, or even Toni Morrison, which, thinking back on it, this was definitely not young adult fiction, a lot of layered and deep things going on with this literature. But I couldn't help but absorb myself into these stories and these pictures that were painted in my mind just on something that I read on the page. And oftentimes, especially like as years passed on, teenage girls, they want to go to the mall on the weekends and hang out with friends or things like that. And I did that a little bit, but actually, like most Saturdays, I was content to ask my mom to just drop me off at the main library in Midtown, and I would just spend hours in the reference section reading these books. I mean, I guess I'm outing myself as some kind of nerd here, but that was really what sparked my imagination. And I would read for pleasure. I still do. So all of these things were early on to me to show like the power of stories, the power of what does your voice do to a story. The pictures that Mother Dear painted of her life and her upbringing, they made me feel like I was right there with her in those moments. And so I remember distinctly thinking like, I really, really, really want to be a writer. And I love to draw and paint and do things in the arts and crafts as well. But I was drawn to the idea of the power of what words could do. So um, the first, I was writing stories here and there and all through the years, but even selling stories to friends for a quarter of a piece in the cafeteria, what a journey that was. I actually managed to sell a few stories. So I figure if I was good enough to get second graders to part with their quarters, then maybe I did have a story to tell worth listening to. So that's another reason why that I wanted to become a writer, is because I saw how my stories were impactful, and I could see how people responded, even if they didn't quote unquote like what I wrote, or if they really loved it, or if it provoked something in them. Like, I love all of that, a part of the process. So regardless of how successful something becomes, or if it's a hit or if it's a flop, and all of those things are relative too, because to me, anything creative is highly subjective. It's just about connecting to the right audience for the most part. So it's not so clear to say that this is awful or this is amazing, but many of us can agree that there are things that really make writing stand out or really make it resonate on a deeper level. And for me personally, it kind of is connected to my why. If you have a piece of yourself in the story, then that's always going to shine through to whoever takes that story in. If you're only doing something because you feel like, okay, I'm just gonna have a little paint by numbers script idea because everybody's doing one of these kinds of stories, or I'm just doing this because, somebody said it might be a good idea. If your heart isn't fully vested in it, then I think that that also shows through. So whenever I write, I always try to keep that North Star in my heart. That's very important to me. I love writing, and I hope that I can do it for the rest of my life. And come what may, like I will continue to write at some level, regardless of what happens to me and my career. It's to me, it's beyond just those things. It's really just a part of the essence of my being. It's as important to me as going for a walk every day or making sure that I get a little sunlight on my skin or all of those things that make me feel whole and happy. Writing is very much essential to that. So that's my why. And I would love to find out what your why is. So please drop a few lines in the comment section and share what inspires you to write. Was it a great aunt or uncle or grandparents, a funny cousin, a good friend that told you stories that just kind of stuck with you? What was it, some life experience that you went through that you know in your soul that only you can tell this story? Why do you want to just make it big in Hollywood? I think that's some people's why as well. Although for me personally, I find that the whys that are closer to your heart are definitely the whys that will carry you through. And living here in Los Angeles, it's very hard to find somebody who doesn't have a screenplay already written or an idea or, this is an industry town. Everybody's constantly pitching. Everybody's constantly trying to get out front and say, this is the next new thing. And I think that that's all a part of the journey of living here. But I never want to lose sight of my very personal why. And I hope you don't either. Thank you for watching.